Donald Trump is now ordering the halt of penny production in the U.S. So there won't be any more pennies in the future. This is a unique action in US history and also has far-reaching consequences for Bitcoin, which we will look at. He says here, let us eliminate waste from the budget of our great nation. And even if it's just pennies for pennies. So what we're seeing here is an absolute chainsaw that's getting Donald Trump out of here. This is also very, very interesting in relation to the Department of Government Efficiency, because Donald Trump has now said that the Department of Government Efficiency has found irregularities in the Treasury, meaning in the US government bonds. And this is the real kicker, because Donald Trump is now uncovering the Ponzi scheme in the U.S. What exactly was found there, we don't know yet. But the voices around Ron Paul are getting louder, saying, end the Fed, end the audit, the federal, so we need to keep an eye on the Fed. And we need to tear down the Fed, or not tear it down, but definitely stop it. I mean, that's not going to happen. The Fed isn't just going to be shut down overnight, but it could really be that the Fed is now being monitored and reviewed. And we're also looking at why there is pressure here now. And it could even be that the biggest Ponzi schemes in history are now being exposed. I have to be honest, I'm not really thinking about that just yet, because certain scandals are already being uncovered. But at a certain level, you might not dare to do it anymore. And the Federal Reserve, the central bank in the USA, is something like the final boss. I don't think there is a more blatant institution in the world that could be controlled and audited than the Federal Reserve. And if you really go after it, could happen pretty quickly that someone's head rolls. You've just seen that happen time and again in the past. For example, when people have stood against the US dollar, heads have rolled in the end. And of course, I hope that this does not happen here for Donald Trump, nor do I want to conjure it up here. But this is really a wild story that's happening here. And this also has a direct effect on Bitcoin because Bitcoin is completely transparent. Here, you can basically verify everything completely. And Bitcoin is ultimately exactly what the Department of Government Efficiency wants to do here in the United States. It's just that Bitcoin already has that transparency by default. But that's not all, because Donald Trump has announced new tariffs for this week. And that could lead to massive volatility again. So we really need to be careful this week. There's also a speech from Jerome Powell this week. This could really get very, very volatile. We've seen in the past that tariffs have led to a lot of uncertainty in the market. And on top of that, we've got the other stuff that Donald Trump is pushing forward. And that could definitely turn into a toxic cocktail here, either up or down. If it goes up, then of course it wouldn't be a toxic cocktail. Even here, the Super Bowl story was pretty uneventful. Some were expecting to see some Bitcoin clips or something like that. Are we going to see ETF commercials from BlackRock or something? But it was definitely a nothing burger. But for sure, there was nothing focused on Bitcoin or crypto or anything like that. We'll get to the crazy stuff in just a moment, now here at the Federal Reserve. But first, let's hear from David Bailey. The assessment here ultimately says that the fact there were no Bitcoin or crypto commercials during the Super Bowl is pretty damn optimistic. We're still in the early phase of the cycle. So he made it very clear if there are still no Super Bowl ads and so on, then we're still very, very early in the cycle. That means we still have a long upside ahead of us before we might head back into a bear market or something like that. And I have to agree with him on that. But when I saw that news, I really had to start doubting again about the whole statement. Here, the president of the Central Bank of the Republic is actually speaking now. He just launched a meme coin here. Check this out. This is an absolute top signal that we're seeing here. He says, today we're launching CAR, an experiment that aims to show how something as simple as a meme can unite people, support national development, and bring the Central African Republic onto the world stage in a unique way. That's just absolute nonsense. Meme coins, they don't connect anything. They are just random meme coins, gambling instruments. And if some president stands up front and officially says, hey folks, we've launched a meme coin, then that's an absolute red flag. I still don't think we've hit the top yet, but we really need to see both sides here. This means that we really do have some top indicators here too, although, as I said, I don't see the top here yet. And in the end, there is now another long sideways phase, which we have seen several times before. In the end, you just got to keep your feet still and chill a bit here. There will be better times ahead, or rather, things aren't that bad right now. I gotta say, everything looks really, really bullish for Bitcoin with what's happening in the background. Just chill, the Bitcoin price is currently holding steady. And I'll say it again, we've already seen this twice. Last year, where we had these long sideways phases that made a lot of people really impatient. People who haven't gotten impatient here have actually benefited. And now here comes the massive shocker. Donald Trump is actually getting rid of pennies in the U.S. And I actually took a look at it. So it currently costs more than 2 cents to actually produce a penny. And from that perspective, it definitely makes sense to slim down the government. Why are we even making a penny? It costs about 2 cents to produce one. There are also these YouTube videos where people, I don't know, gather a kilo of pennies, melt them down, and sell them. And then they basically get more. Like for the value they could exchange here in the store for the pennies. And accordingly, the discussion here wasn't new. It was actually a very, very old debate. In Germany, there are also discussions like, okay, should we get rid of the small cent coins or something like that? But Donald Trump is really going at it like a chainsaw, and in the end, it's really about wanting to set things up more efficiently. That definitely has to do with the Department of Government Efficiency. I'm sure Elon Musk had something to say about this too. But let me read you the text here, because what he says is really brutal. He just dropped the statement. So it says here that Donald Trump is instructing the Treasury Secretary to stop the production of pennies. The pennies are produced here, and it's not actually the central bank that does that, but there's some kind of mint here. The Federal Reserve distributes the pennies, the coins, the quarters, whatever else there is, and the nickels are still around, the dimes are still around. The central bank sends all of that out. So on one hand, this is definitely a direct attack against the central bank. He basically says, hey, central bank or the mint, which is producing them in the background, you can't distribute pennies anymore. And in his tweet about it, he says, for way too long, the United States has been minting pennies. That literally costs us more than 2 cents. That's so wasteful. I have instructed my Treasury Secretary to stop the production of new pennies. Let's eliminate waste from the budget of our great nation, even if it's just 1 penny at a time. Elon Musk has said that his big goal is to achieve a balanced budget with the Department of Government Efficiency. I already mentioned that in the last video. Right now, Elon Musk is managing to save about $1 billion a day. But he would need to save $5 to $6 billion a day. So he definitely needs to 5 times his efficiency. That's definitely not impossible. But you really have to cover everything, beat to pieces. And you really can't stop here with the Federal Reserve. And it's pretty crazy that Donald Trump is taking on the Federal Reserve. Because I've said it before, taking on the Federal Reserve isn't exactly child's play. And you can see it, he wants to get Jerome Powell on his side, wants to explain to him why Jerome Powell should lower interest rates. Because Donald Trump definitely wants low interest rates. I mean, it would be good for the Bitcoin price because that would pump Bitcoin up. But that would ultimately go against Jerome Powell's independence. And in the end, it's very, very exciting that Donald Trump can't just depose Jerome Powell. He can apparently order the pennies to be stopped, but he can't get rid of Jerome Powell. And we now also know that he doesn't really like the monetary policy from Jerome Powell. But what's even crazier is the following news, because it didn't stop with the penny stuff. In the end, Donald Trump said that the Department of Government Efficiency has found irregularities in U.S. Treasury bonds and might ignore some of them. Scott Bessent just checked his phone and got the worst Sunday scare news ever. That something has gone massively wrong with the Treasury bonds, let's just say. Maybe there's a scandal, corruption, or something like that. You never really know for sure. But we need to know that the U.S. Treasury bond is the most important, the most significant government bond in the world. If, of course, some Ponzi scheme or something comes to light. I mean, we all know that the US dollar is a Ponzi scheme. But if any fake stories or scandals are uncovered here, that would, of course, be one of the biggest scandals that have ever happened. It says here in the explicit statement about this news that President Donald Trump hinted that Elon Musk's government funding team, the Department of Government Efficiency, found irregularities in the US Treasury bonds. And this could lead to the US ignoring some of them. Trump didn't elaborate on that. One that could possibly be ignored. He made the comments during a conversation with reporters on Sunday aboard Air Force One. On the way to the Super Bowl. It's also crazy what he's doing on the side. There he goes to the Super Bowl. Before he heads to the Super Bowl, he's exposing the US Treasury bonds here. And right after the Super Bowl was in halftime, he drops the news that they're going to stop producing pennies. It can't get any crazier than this. We're seeing the absolute escalation in the U.S. And whether this is good or bad for Bitcoin, we'll have to wait and see how the market assesses it. I mean, on one hand, you could see it that way if they really set up the US dollar more efficiently and so on. I had discussions about that before, here in El Salvador with someone who also kind of emigrated to America and so on. He said the US dollar will. It'll only exist for maybe another 6 months, then the US dollar is going to crash. Then I told him, hey, take it easy. What's going on here in the U.S. right now with the Department of Government Efficiency, it ultimately ensures that the US can still sustain the dollar here. Of course, he'll drive against the New Orleans at some point, and of course the thing will crash at some point. But if we make the whole thing more efficient, if we cut back on the deficits, if we stop issuing pennies, which are basically just a waste of money, then it's taxpayer money and so on. When you ultimately uncover the fraud that's been happening with the Treasury bonds here in the U.S., where they've exposed all these leftist folks who have been framing any kind of freedom movements and such, where a lot of shady stuff has been going on behind the scenes, and where the entire mainstream media landscape has been brainwashed, funded, and pumped up, and so on, where massive corruption has ultimately taken root. If you uncover all of this now, whoa, you can see I'm really sweating here. It feels like there's something in the room right now. 35 degrees. And of course, it's just so crazy. Stories that are happening here. But definitely, when you put all of this together, trust in the US dollar should actually be rising rather than falling. This means that the US dollar will tend to appreciate in relation to the euro and in relation to other currencies. But that also means the euro is going to come under pressure, and other fiat currencies will be under pressure too. So what's happening right now, in my opinion, is actually extending the life of the US dollar. On the other hand, this will lead to the life of other fiat currencies being shortened here because there are no such audits in Germany. The central bank, the ECB in Germany, the ivory tower is not audited. In Germany, there's no Department of Government Efficiency. And these are definitely things that are relevant here, where you can't just sleep on it in Germany or Europe, and where you really have to be on your toes as a Bitcoin investor. And then we had this news that didn't cause a huge sell-off or volatility or anything like that, because the last time Donald Trump talked about tariffs, it always either jolted upwards or downwards. Either when he said tariffs are coming, then the Bitcoin price went down in the global markets, where he then said, hey, sorry bro, it's not that bad after all, we're lifting the tariffs again. Then it went up again. This is another live update because exactly what happened right after the announcement when I recorded this video. There wasn't any reaction at first, but then shortly after, the Bitcoin price sold off down to around 95,000 and then pumped back up. I don't know where the Bitcoin price will be when this video goes online, but we definitely saw a reaction to this announcement. And that was basically the same as it has been in the past. And it could also be that this happens a few more times next week. They're saying that we'll announce the corresponding tariffs on Tuesday or Wednesday. They will then almost immediately come into effect. Trump is also announcing 25% tariffs on aluminum and steel on Monday. So if you watch the video, you'll see that in a few hours, the tariffs on aluminum and steel will be introduced. And I think there are 1 or 2 more products or something like that that are starting. And then there are supposed to be reciprocal tariffs introduced that might come into effect on Wednesday or Thursday. And that could definitely cause some volatility in the market again. I mean, by now the market has figured out that tariffs tend to lead to a sell-off at first. Then there's a rebound again. It's always been like that. Maybe the market doesn't seem to be scared of these tariffs anymore, you know? It's like, okay, maybe it's just a bunch of hot air and stuff. In the end, it didn't turn out to be that bad after all. Donald Trump just threatened. Then the other countries pulled back, realizing, okay, you can't underestimate the U.S. Donald Trump is really serious about this. And then things would be more or less sorted out. And the US got what they wanted. Because the US, I'll say it again, is just the biggest player. They have the biggest bazookas, they have the biggest cannons. And the EU or other countries really don't have much to say about it. Absolutely crazy what's going on here right now. If you want to buy Bitcoin now, I'll put a link down below for you. 21 Bitcoin, how you can easily, safely, and simply buy Bitcoin. Absolutely recommend it. So you can really set yourself up well here. And if you're looking for a hardware wallet, I definitely recommend the TREZOR hardware wallet here. The oldest hardware wallet that's out there on the market. And here, with the code, you also get 10% off your purchase. Guys, see you later. Let me know what you think about it.